The suitcase hit the frozen porch with a crack that echoed down the quiet street. Snow swirled through the yellow glow of the porch light as my mother stood in the doorway, her face twisted with rage I'd never seen before. "Get out!" Marianne Stone screamed, her voice shredding the winter silence. "Get out of my house right now." I stood there in my slippers, my hands shaking, trying to understand what had just happened. Neighbors appeared on their porches, silhouettes against warm windows, watching the show. My mother's boyfriend leaned against the doorframe behind her, arms crossed, smirking like he'd won something. "Mom, please, can we just talk about this?" My voice came out small, pathetic. I said get out. She stepped forward, and I stumbled backward down one step, then another. The door slammed so hard the wreath fell off. I heard it hit the ground inside. Then silence. Just my breathing and the wind. Suddenly, the phone rang inside the house. I could see my mother through the window as she grabbed it, still furious. Then her face changed. The color drained away. Her mouth opened. "What? No, that can't be right. Foreclosure?" "But Her knees buckled. She grabbed the kitchen counter. Through the glass, I watched her world collapse the same way mine just had. I picked up my suitcase and walked into the dark, tears freezing on my cheeks. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. My name is Renee Calder. I'm 32 years old, a financial analyst at a mid-size firm in Columbus, Ohio. The woman who just threw me out into the snow is my mother, and until tonight, I still believed she would choose me over her pride. I sat in my car in the driveway, shaking, the engine running for heat. My phone buzzed. A voicemail notification from earlier today. First Peninsula Bank. I pressed play with trembling fingers. "Ms. Calder, this is Derek Shen from the Fraud Prevention Department. We had an attempt to access your account today using outdated joint authorization. The woman claimed to be you, then said she was your mother with permission to handle your finances. We denied the request, but you should come in immediately to update your security." My stomach dropped. She tried to get into my bank account. Today. Hours before throwing me out. The pieces started connecting in my head, forming a picture I didn't want to see. My mother hadn't exploded because I'd refused to co-sign a loan. She'd exploded because I was the last card she had left to play, and I'd finally said no. I looked back at the house. The lights were still on. Through the window, I could see her pacing, phone pressed to her ear, probably begging the bank for more time she didn't have. I was 12 when I realized my mother saw me differently than other parents saw their children. It was a Tuesday night at the diner she owned, a small place called Stone's Corner that smelled like coffee and regret. I was wiping down tables after school while she sat in the back booth with another man, another potential boyfriend, another possible solution to problems she never named. "Renee, honey, come here," she'd called. I walked over, rag still in my hand. "This is Warren. He's going to help us expand the diner." Warren smiled at me with too many teeth. My mother's hand rested on his arm. "You're a good kid," Warren said. "Helping your mom like this." I nodded and went back to wiping tables. That was my role. The helper. The responsible one. The one who covered shifts when she disappeared for weekends. The one who called suppliers when bills went unpaid. At 12 years old, I was already managing things she couldn't be bothered with. That night, after Warren left without expanding anything, my mother sat me down. "You understand how hard things are, don't you?" she asked. "We have to be smart. We have to use every advantage." I nodded because I was 12 and didn't know what else to do. The money disappeared on a Thursday. My grandmother, my father's mother, had died the previous spring. She'd left me $15,000 in her will, specifically designated for college. The lawyer had explained it to me carefully. "This is yours, Renee. For your education." Your mother is the trustee until you turn 18, but the money is only for school expenses. I was 14. The money was supposed to be safe in an account I couldn't touch yet, but my mother could access for approved educational costs. I'd found the statements once, hidden in her desk drawer. The balance had been exactly $15,000. Then one day, I needed those statements for a school financial aid meeting. I looked in the drawer. The folder was gone. "Mom, where are the papers from Grandma's account?" I asked. She was doing her makeup in the bathroom, getting ready for another date. "What papers?" "The college fund. I need the statements for school." Her hand paused with the mascara wand. "Oh, honey, I had to use that money. For the diner. It was an emergency." My 14-year-old brain tried to process this. But it was for college. "And the diner pays for everything, including your future college," she snapped. "Don't be selfish." 6 months later, the diner closed anyway. The next week, my mother came home driving a new car. The first time I co-signed for her, I was 23. Fresh out of college with my finance degree, working my first real job, trying to build credit. "It's just a small personal loan," my mother explained over coffee. $5,000. "I'm renovating the house, increasing the value. I'll pay it back in 6 months. But my credit took a hit during the divorce, and they need a co-signer." She meant her divorce from Frank, boyfriend number 4, who'd lasted 2 years before figuring out what I'd known all along. My mother was a black hole for money and sympathy. "I don't know, Mom. My financial advisor said co-signing is risky." "Your financial advisor doesn't understand family," she said, and her eyes went hard. "Family helps family, Renee. Or did college teach you to abandon the woman who raised you?" I signed. She missed the 3rd payment. By the 6th month, I was covering the whole loan myself while she explained that renovations had cost more than expected, that she'd pay me back soon, that I was being impatient. That was the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Over the next 9 years, I co-signed 4 more times. Paid property taxes twice when she forgot. Covered her car payment for 3 months during another boyfriend crisis. Each time, she promised it would be the last time. Each time, I believed her because I wanted to. The explosion happened because I'd finally learned. 3 weeks ago, my mother called with the familiar desperation in her voice. "Renee, honey, I need your help. The roof is leaking badly. I need to take out a home equity loan, but the bank wants a co-signer because of the late payments last year. It's only $20,000. I'll handle all the payments." I'd been working with a therapist. We'd spent 6 months unpacking my relationship with my mother, and I'd finally understood what my therapist kept trying to tell me. I wasn't helping. I was enabling. "No, Mom. I can't do that anymore." Silence on the line. "Then, what do you mean you can't?" "I mean I'm not co-signing any more loans. You've never paid me back for the last one. I'm still covering your car insurance. How dare you?" Her voice shifted to ice. "After everything I've done for you? I raised you alone after your father died. I sacrificed everything. I know, and I'm grateful. But I can't keep doing this." "Fine," she'd said. "Don't come crying to me when you need help someday." She'd hung up. I thought that was the end. But 3 weeks later, she called again, voice sweet like nothing had happened. "Come over for dinner. Let's not fight anymore." I went because I was stupid enough to hope we could fix things. The moment I walked in, her boyfriend was there, and I knew I'd been set up. Dinner was ambush disguised as reconciliation. My mother's boyfriend, Kyle, a man 10 years younger than her who'd moved in 6 months ago, sat at the head of my father's old table. My mother kept refilling my wine glass, talking about family and forgiveness. Then Kyle leaned forward. "Your mom told me about your disagreement," he said. "Seems pretty selfish to me. She raised you, and now you won't help her in a crisis?" My jaw tightened. That's between my mother and me. Family doesn't abandon family, he continued, like he'd rehearsed it. My mother nodded along, playing victim. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm setting boundaries. That's when my mother's mask cracked. Boundaries? You mean selfishness. You're punishing me because you think you're better than me now with your fancy job. Mom, that's not what this is about. Then prove it. Co-sign the loan. It's just a signature. No. The word came out firm this time. I said no. She stood up, chair scraping. Then you can leave. If you won't help me, you're not welcome in my house. I stared at her. You're serious? Get out, she screamed, and that's how I ended up on the porch in my slippers 20 minutes later, watching through the window as the bank called to tell her everything was falling apart. Kyle had packed my overnight bag while she yelled. They'd been planning this. I slept on my coworker Danny's couch that night, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, replaying everything. Danny had been my cubicle neighbor for 3 years. When I'd called her at 9:30, crying, she hadn't hesitated. Come over right now. Her apartment smelled like vanilla candles and safety. She made tea while I sat shaking on her sofa. Your own mother threw you out in the snow? Danny kept saying. Who does that? Around midnight, she scrolled through her phone and went quiet. Renee, you need to see this. She turned the screen toward me. My mother had posted on social media 30 minutes ago. Heartbroken tonight. After everything I've done for my daughter, she's stolen from me and abandoned me in my darkest hour. Some children forget where they came from. Praying for her soul. The comments were already filling up. Relatives I barely knew calling me ungrateful. Family friends asking what I'd stolen. My aunt demanding I apologize publicly. My hands went numb. She was rewriting history in real time, turning herself into the victim before I could tell anyone what really happened. This is insane, Danny whispered. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text read, we need to talk about your mother's debts. This is about the property at 847 Maple Street. Call me. A phone number followed. My mother's address. I stared at the message, and something cold settled in my chest. This was bigger than a fight about a loan. The next morning, I called the number. A man answered on the second ring. Derek Martinez, First Peninsula Bank, Loss Mitigation Department. This is Renee Calder. You texted me about my mother's property? Yes, thank you for calling. I need to inform you that Marianne Stone is 3 months delinquent on her home equity line of credit. Normally, this wouldn't involve you, but our fraud department flagged an authorization form from 8 years ago that listed you as an approved party on the account. My stomach dropped. I never authorized anything for a home equity line. The form shows your signature from when you co-signed a personal loan in 2015. Mrs. Stone apparently used that old paperwork to claim you'd approved access to the HELOC. She attempted to draw an additional $48,000 yesterday. When we called to verify with you, the numbers didn't match our records, so we denied it. I sat down hard on Danny's couch. She tried to forge my authorization? We believe so. The signature looked traced. Ms. Calder, your mother is facing foreclosure. The auction is scheduled for 8 weeks from now. I'm calling because if she successfully tied you to this debt before we caught it, you could have been liable. My hands shook. What do I do? File a police report for identity fraud. Contact a lawyer. And I'd suggest freezing your credit immediately. After I hung up, Danny looked at me. What did he say? My mother tried to steal $48,000 using my name. I drove to my mother's house while she was at work. She waitressed now at a chain restaurant, 3 shifts a week, barely enough to cover groceries. The house looked the same as it had for 20 years. My father had bought it the year before he died, a modest 2-bedroom with a front porch and mature trees. I still had my key. I let myself in, hands shaking. The kitchen was a mess. Dishes piled in the sink. Mail stacked on the counter. I started going through the mail, looking for anything that might explain what the banker had said. That's when I found the drawer. My mother had always kept important papers in the kitchen desk drawer. It was stuffed full. I pulled out handfuls of envelopes. Foreclosure warning from the bank dated 4 months ago. Late payment notice. Property tax delinquency notice. A second mortgage statement I'd never seen before showing a balance of $83,000. How did she owe that much? The house had been paid off when my father died. Then, at the bottom, I found it. A photocopied cashier's check from 12 years ago. $15,000. Made out to Marianne Stone, trustee for Renee Calder Educational Fund. Endorsed on the back in my mother's handwriting. Deposited into her personal account. My grandmother's money. The money she'd told me she invested in the diner. She'd just taken it. Straight into her checking account. I took pictures of everything with my phone. Every document, every notice, every lie made paper. Then I heard a car in the driveway. I barely made it out the back door before my mother's key turned in the front lock. I crouched behind the garbage cans in the side yard, heart hammering, watching through the kitchen window as she walked in. She looked tired. Older than I remembered. She moved through the kitchen slowly, opened the fridge, stared inside without taking anything. Then she noticed the drawer. It was still open, papers slightly disturbed. Her face changed. She grabbed her phone and dialed. "Kyle, someone's been in the house. The papers are moved." A pause. Who else would it be? She probably made a copy of my key years ago. That little snake. I stayed frozen until she went upstairs. Then I slipped around the front and got in my car 3 houses down where I'd parked. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely start the engine. Back at Danny's apartment, I spread all the photos across her coffee table. "This is fraud," Danny said, looking at the pictures. "Like, actual criminal fraud. She's my mother. She threw you out in the snow and tried to steal $50,000 using your identity. She stopped being just your mother when she committed crimes." I called Mrs. Kirkland, our next-door neighbor for 20 years. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Renee? Honey, I saw what happened the other night. I'm so sorry." "Mrs. Kirkland, I know this sounds strange, but do you have a doorbell camera?" "I do. One of those Ring things my son installed. Would you be willing to share the footage from that night?" Mrs. Kirkland invited me over an hour later. She lived alone since Mr. Kirkland had passed, and her house smelled like lemon polish and old books. She pulled up the Ring app on her iPad. "I watched the whole thing," she said quietly. I felt terrible, but I didn't know if I should intervene. The video played. There I was on the porch, suitcase at my feet, my mother screaming. Kyle in the background, filming with his phone. The door slamming. Then the phone ringing inside. The volume was low, but Mrs. Kirkland turned it up. Through the door, we could hear my mother answer. "Hello? Yes, this is Marianne Stone." "What? No, there must be some mistake." "Foreclosure proceedings? But I've been trying to work with you. I was waiting for my daughter to co-sign. She's been delaying, but she'll do it. She has to." A male voice on the other end, muffled but clear enough. "Mrs. Stone, your daughter already contacted our fraud department. We're aware of the unauthorized access attempt. The foreclosure sale is scheduled for March 15th. You'll receive official notice by mail." The moment her knees buckled was captured perfectly on camera. Mrs. Kirkland paused the video. "I can send you this file if you need it." "Thank you," I whispered. I had proof now. Proof of the eviction, proof of the bank call, proof that she'd been planning to force me into co-signing. "Renee," Mrs. Kirkland said gently, "your mother needs help. Professional help. This isn't about being mean. She's drowning, and she's trying to pull you under with her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father. He died when I was 7, a sudden heart attack at 41. My memories of him were faded but warm. He used to call me his smart cookie. He'd worked in insurance and had been careful about money. The house had been his idea, his dream. A safe place for his family. I remembered a metal box he'd kept in the hall closet. After he died, my mother had stored it in the attic. She'd told me it was just old paperwork, nothing important. But what if there was something in there about the house? Danny was already asleep on her bed, so I crept to the small storage closet in her apartment where I'd stuffed my suitcase. Inside, I'd grabbed a few things from the attic in my rush: photo albums, my father's old watch, and a small metal box I'd taken on impulse. I pried it open with a butter knife. Inside were documents. My father's death certificate. Their marriage license. Insurance papers. And at the bottom, a copy of the house deed. I read it under the dim light from my phone. The property at 847 Maple Street had been purchased by James Calder. Title held jointly with Marianne Stone Calder. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. That meant when my father died, ownership should have passed entirely to my mother. But there was another paper underneath. An amendment to the deed from 2 years after my father's death. I squinted at the signature. It was supposed to be my father's signature. But he'd been dead for 2 years when this document was dated. Monday morning, I took the documents to Danny's cousin, Maya, a paralegal at a firm downtown. Maya's office was small but organized, law books lining one wall, windows overlooking the street. She examined the deed amendment under a magnifying lamp. "This signature is traced," she said after 5 minutes. "See how the pressure is uneven? And the ink stopped and started here, like someone was following a line slowly." My throat tightened. "So it's forged." "I'm not a forensic expert, but I've seen enough documents to know this one's suspicious. If your father was already deceased when this was supposedly signed, that's clear fraud." "What does the amendment do?" Maya flipped to the second page. "It removes your name as a contingent beneficiary and makes your mother sole owner with full refinance rights. Basically, it gave her complete control of the property and the ability to borrow against it without restriction." "But I was 9 years old. How was I a beneficiary?" "Your father must have set it up that way in his estate plan." "Smart man. He probably wanted to make sure you'd inherit the house if something happened to your mother." "She changed that." I stared at the paper. "Can I fix this?" "You can challenge the deed in court, but that takes time and money. For now, I'd recommend filing a fraud alert with the credit bureaus and making a police report about the identity theft. That'll protect you from any more attempts to use your information." Maya looked at me seriously. "Renee, if the house goes to foreclosure auction, anyone can bid on it. Including you." The idea planted itself in my mind like a seed. What if I bought my father's house at auction? The house that should have been mine in the first place? I drove to my mother's workplace, a chain diner off the interstate. She was refilling coffee pots when I walked in. The moment she saw me, her face hardened. "You're not welcome here." "Mom, we need to talk about the foreclosure." "There's nothing to talk about. You've ruined everything by refusing to help me." I kept my voice level. I found the documents. The forged deed amendment. The cashier's check from Grandma's fund. The loan you took out without telling me. Her face went white. Then red. "You broke into my house?" "I used my key. And I found proof of fraud." "Get out," she hissed. "You ungrateful, selfish little thief. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" Other customers were staring now. A manager started walking over. I pulled out the copied deed and laid it on the counter. "Dad left the house to both of us. You forged his signature to take my name off. That's a felony, Mom." She stared at the paper. "You can't prove anything." I have the original document. And a paralegal who's willing to testify about the forgery. The manager arrived. Ma'am, you need to leave. I picked up the deed. Mom, the auction is in 7 weeks. You don't have to lose everything. Just talk to me. She grabbed a water glass and threw it. It shattered against the wall behind me. Get out. Somehow, we'd come full circle. I left while the manager called security. I filed a police report that afternoon. The officer who took my statement was a tired-looking woman in her 40s named Officer Patricia Valdez. She listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. Ms. Calder, I'm going to be straight with you. What your mother did constitutes identity theft and possibly deed fraud. But prosecuting family members in these cases is complicated. Courts are reluctant, and it's emotionally devastating. I'm not trying to send her to jail, I said. I just want to protect myself. That's smart. The report will be on record if she tries anything else. I'm also going to tell you something off the record. She leaned forward. Your mother isn't the first person I've seen do this. Financial desperation makes people do terrible things. But here's the thing, you can't save someone who's drowning if they're pulling you under. You have to let go. I left the station with a case number and a heavy heart. That night, Maya called. I did some research. First Peninsula Bank is selling the house through county auction services. You can register to bid online. You'd need proof of funds or pre-approval for a loan. How much would I need? The property's valued at $190,000, but they'll probably start bidding at the loan balance. About $95,000. If you can get approved for a loan or show you have access to around $100,000, you could register. I thought about my savings. I'd been careful for years, watching my mother's chaos and learning what not to do. I had $43,000 in savings. Not enough alone, but maybe enough for a down payment if I could get financing. Can I register under an LLC? Yes, actually that's smart. Keeps your name off the public record until after the sale. I stayed up until 2 a.m. that night, filling out paperwork to form RC Holdings, LLC. The family dinner ambush happened 2 weeks later. My uncle, my mother's brother, called and begged me to come to his house for Sunday dinner. Your mother is devastated, Renee. She won't eat. She's barely sleeping. We need to get you two in the same room and work this out. I should have known better. But some small part of me still hoped that maybe, surrounded by family, my mother would be honest. I was wrong. When I arrived, it wasn't just my uncle. My aunt was there, my mother's 2 cousins, Kyle, and my mother herself, looking frail and sad in a way I'd never seen. They'd staged an intervention, for me. Renee, honey, my aunt started, your mother explained everything. How you've been angry since you were a teenager. How you've blamed her for things that weren't her fault. I stared at my mother. She looked at the floor. That's not true. She said you stole documents from her house, one of the cousins added. That you're trying to take her home. The home that was supposed to be mine, I said quietly. The home she fraudulently claimed sole ownership of by forging my dead father's signature. The room went silent. My uncle cleared his throat. That's a serious accusation. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos of the forged deed. Then the cashier's check from my grandmother. Then the foreclosure notices my mother had hidden. This is what's true, I said. She stole from me as a child, forged documents as an adult, and tried to commit identity theft last month. The bank is foreclosing because she took out loans against a house she obtained through fraud. My mother stood up, tears streaming. I did what I had to do to survive. You don't understand how hard it's been. You're right. I don't understand. Because I've been working since I was 12 to survive while you've been borrowing and lying and destroying everything you touch. I looked at my uncle. I'm done. If you want to help her, help her. But leave me out of it. I walked out to the sound of my mother sobbing. Kyle followed me outside. "You're going to regret this," he said. "She'll make you pay." The next morning, I found out what he meant. My work email inbox was flooded. Anonymous messages sent to HR claiming I'd been embezzling, that I'd stolen from my previous employer, that I'd falsified my credentials. My heart stopped. This could destroy my career. I went straight to our HR director, Ms. Pamela Torres, and explained everything. I showed her the police report, the evidence of my mother's fraud attempts, the threatening text from Kyle. "This is harassment," Ms. Torres said firmly. "We'll forward everything to IT to trace the sources. In the meantime, you're not under investigation. These claims are clearly retaliatory." IT traced the emails within 3 hours. They'd come from 3 addresses, all created the previous night. The IP addresses matched Kyle's laptop and my mother's phone. HR sent a cease and desist letter to both of them. But the damage was done. People in my office had heard rumors. I could feel them watching me differently. Maya called that evening with worse news. "Your mother's trying to refinance with a predatory lender. One of those companies that targets people in foreclosure. If she succeeds, she could delay the auction. Can we stop her? I'm filing an emergency fraud claim with the county clerk tomorrow. We'll request a freeze on any title changes pending investigation of the forged deed. It should hold." Should. Judges don't like to interfere in property rights without strong evidence. But we have the deed, the timeline, and your police report. I think we'll get the freeze. That night, I lay awake thinking about my father. What would he think of all this? Would he understand why I was fighting? Or would he be ashamed that his family had torn itself apart? The hearing was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Maya and I arrived at the courthouse at 8:30. My mother was already there, with Kyle and a lawyer I didn't recognize, a tired man in a wrinkled suit who looked like he'd passed the bar by a narrow margin. The judge was an older man named Judge Warren Blackwell, with stern eyes and no patience for nonsense. He reviewed our filing quickly. "Ms. Calder, you're claiming your late father's signature on this deed amendment was forged?" "Yes, Your Honor. My father died in 2009. This amendment is dated 2011. The judge looked at my mother's lawyer. "Counsel?" The lawyer shuffled his papers. "Your Honor, Mrs. Stone maintains that this document was signed prior to Mr. Calder's death and simply filed later due to administrative delays." "Administrative delays of 2 years," the judge asked drily. "That seems unusual." "Grief affects people differently, Your Honor. Mrs. Stone was overwhelmed after her husband's death." Maya stood. "Your Honor, we have the original deed showing joint tenancy with the daughter as contingent beneficiary. We also have testimony from a paralegal expert willing to testify that the signature shows signs of tracing. Most importantly, the amendment wasn't filed until Mrs. Stone needed to refinance the property for a home equity line of credit." The judge studied the documents. "The timing is certainly suspicious." He looked at my mother. "Mrs. Stone, did your husband discuss this amendment with you before his death?" My mother, looking small and fragile, said, "He wanted me to have full control. He trusted me. But he died 2 years before this was filed," the judge repeated. A long silence. Then the judge made his ruling. "I'm granting a temporary freeze on any title changes or refinancing pending a full investigation. The foreclosure auction may proceed as scheduled, as that addresses the existing debt. But no new loans or modifications until this matter is resolved." My mother turned to stare at me as we left the courtroom. "You've destroyed me," she said. Not yelled. Just stated it like a fact. "You've taken everything." "No, Mom. You destroyed yourself. I'm just protecting what's left." Kyle stepped between us. "You haven't won. We'll fight this." "With what money?" I asked. "You can't refinance. You can't sell. The auction's in 3 weeks." My mother's face crumpled. For a second, I felt that old familiar pull, the urge to fix things, to make her feel better, to take care of her like I'd been doing since I was 12. Then I remembered the forged signature. The stolen inheritance. The identity theft attempt. I walked away. Maya grabbed my arm in the parking lot. You did the right thing. Then why do I feel terrible? Because she's your mother, and you love her. But love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you. Over the next 2 weeks, I barely slept. I finalized the LLC paperwork. I got pre-approved for a loan from a small credit union that specialized in investment properties. I registered to bid through county auction services. Everything was ready. Except me. Was I really going to buy my mother's house out from under her? The house where I'd grown up, where my father had died, where every room held memories. Danny found me crying at her kitchen table one night. You don't have to do this, she said gently. There are other ways. Like what? Let her lose it to some investor who'll flip it. Let her keep destroying herself? Maybe that's not your choice to make. I looked at her. She made it my choice when she tried to steal my identity. The auction was set for Tuesday at 10 a.m. The courthouse lobby on auction day hummed with the sound of whispered conversations and shuffling papers. Investors stood in clusters, examining property lists on their phones. I sat alone in the corner, my bidder number in my hand, my heart hammering. Maya stood beside me. You're registered under the LLC. Your name won't appear until after the sale closes. What if she sees me? She probably won't come. Most homeowners don't. But at 9:55, my mother walked in. Kyle was with her, and they both looked like they hadn't slept in days. She scanned the room and spotted me immediately. Her face went from shock to fury. She started walking over, but Kyle grabbed her arm. The auctioneer stepped up to the podium. We'll begin with lot 17, 847 Maple Street. My hands shook. The auctioneer started. Opening bid is $95,000, representing the outstanding loan balance. A man in the front row raised his paddle. 95. 100, someone else called. The numbers climbed. 105. 110. 115. I raised my paddle. 120. My mother's head whipped around. Our eyes met across the room. Kyle shouted, she's stealing from her own mother. This is fraud. The auctioneer didn't pause. 125. Another bidder. 130. My heart was racing. This was more than I'd planned for. Maya whispered, we can stop. I thought about my father. About the 7-year-old girl who'd lost him. About the 14-year-old who'd lost her college fund. About the 32-year-old who'd been thrown into the snow. I raised my paddle again. 140. Silence. The other bidders exchanged glances. Too high for an investment property in this neighborhood. 140 going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice. Kyle started toward me, but a security guard stepped in his way. Sold to bidder 73, RC Holdings, for $140,000. The gavel dropped. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I sat frozen, unable to feel anything except the weight of what I'd just done. The paperwork took 3 days to finalize. On Friday, I officially became the owner of 847 Maple Street. The same house my father had bought. The same house I'd grown up in. The same house my mother had lost through her own choices. Maya helped me draft a letter. It was professional, clear, and, I hoped, compassionate. I delivered it myself on Saturday morning. My mother's car was in the driveway. I left the envelope in the mailbox and drove away before she could see me. The letter offered her a choice. She could stay in the house for 6 months under a temporary lease at $800 per month, well below market rate. In exchange, she had to agree to 3 conditions: attend financial counseling, sign a no-harassment agreement, and make no claim to the property. If she refused, standard eviction procedures would begin in 30 days. I didn't hear from her for a week. Then Maya called. She's refusing. She tore up the letter and threw it in her lawyer's face. She's claiming you coerced the sale, that you manipulated the auction, that she's the victim of elder abuse. She's 56 years old. That's not elderly. Maya sighed. I know. Her lawyer knows it too. He's advised her to take the lease offer, but she won't listen. She's telling everyone you're a monster who stole her home. So what happens now? We file for eviction. The sheriff will post notice. She'll have 30 days to vacate or contest in court. If she contests, there'll be a hearing, but she doesn't have grounds. The sale was legal. I hung up feeling hollow. This wasn't what I'd wanted. I'd wanted my mother to accept responsibility, to get help, to maybe, just maybe, become someone I could have a relationship with again. Instead, she'd chosen to fight until the very end. The sheriff posted the notice on a Tuesday. Mrs. Kirkland called me that afternoon. Your mother came to my door crying, she said. She wanted me to testify that you've been harassing her. I told her no. Renee, I'm sorry, but I can't watch this anymore. She needs professional help, and she's refusing to get it. I know, I whispered. Thank you for being honest. 2 weeks later, my mother filed a contest. Her argument was that I'd manipulated her, that I'd deliberately caused the foreclosure, that the auction was fraudulent because I was her daughter. The hearing lasted 30 minutes. Judge Blackwell reviewed the evidence, the forged deed, the identity theft attempt, the police report, the bank's fraud investigation. Mrs. Stone, he said finally, your daughter did not cause your foreclosure. Your failure to pay the loan you voluntarily took out caused the foreclosure. The auction was conducted legally. Your daughter had every right to bid. But she's my daughter, my mother cried. She's supposed to take care of me. The judge's expression didn't change. Adult children are not obligated to subsidize their parents' poor financial decisions, particularly when those decisions include fraud and identity theft. The eviction stands. You have 14 days. I didn't go to the house on moving day. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in Danny's apartment while Maya supervised the process with the sheriff's department. My mother left peacefully, according to the report. She'd packed her things, and Kyle had rented a truck. They moved to an apartment across town, a small one-bedroom that Kyle's brother owned. Maya called me that evening. It's done. The house is yours. The locks have been changed. I drove there at sunset, parking in the driveway for the first time as the owner. The house looked the same. The porch where I'd been thrown out still had a crack in the third step. The window where I'd watched my mother collapse during the bank call reflected the orange sky. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled stale and empty. My mother had taken most of the furniture, but she'd left things too, old photographs on the mantel, the kitchen table my father had refinished, marks on the wall where she'd measured my height as a child. I walked through each room, saying goodbye to the ghosts. The living room where my father used to read to me. The kitchen where I'd done homework while my mother got ready for dates. My old bedroom, still painted the lavender I'd chosen at 13. In my parents' old bedroom, I found something she'd left behind. A shoe box on the closet shelf. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Letters from my father to my mother, written before they were married. I sat on the floor and read them. He'd loved her. Really loved her. He'd seen something in her I'd never known. He'd written about building a future together, about giving me a stable home, about growing old on this porch. At the bottom of the box was one more letter. Addressed to me in my father's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was dated 1 week before my father died. My dear Renee, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm writing this because your grandmother suggested I should, and she's usually right about these things. I want you to know that you are the best thing I ever did in this life. You're smart and kind and stronger than you know. Your mother loves you, but she struggles with things I don't fully understand. She's afraid of not having enough, of being left behind, of not being good enough. That fear makes her do things that don't make sense. If something happens to me, watch over her, but don't let her fear become yours. Don't let anyone, even people who love you, make you smaller to make themselves feel bigger. The house is yours as much as hers. I set it up that way legally because I wanted you to have security no matter what. I hope you never need this letter. I hope I'm there to see you graduate college, get married, have kids of your own. But if I'm not, remember that you carry my love with you always. You don't owe anyone your future, Renee. Not even family. Especially not at the cost of your own happiness. Be smart. Be strong. Be free. Love always, Dad. I cried until I had nothing left. Then I folded the letter carefully and put it in my pocket. My father had known. He'd known what my mother was, what she might become. And he'd tried to protect me, even after death. The forged deed made sense now. My mother had been afraid of sharing ownership with me. Afraid I'd sell the house, afraid I'd make decisions she couldn't control. So she'd erased my father's protection and taken everything for herself. I stood up, wiped my face, and walked through the house one more time. Then I locked the door behind me and drove away. I wasn't keeping the house. I couldn't live in it, and I didn't want to rent it out. But I had a different plan. 6 months later, I stood in a conference room downtown with Maya, Danny, and 3 other women I'd met through a financial abuse support group. The house on Maple Street had been sold to a nice family with 2 kids. The profit, after paying off my loan and covering costs, came to $78,000. I'd used $40,000 to buy a small, sunny apartment for myself. A place with no ghosts, no history, no memories of being thrown into the snow. The remaining $38,000 became something else. I want to introduce the Calder Grant, I told the women gathered around the table. It's a microfund for daughters navigating financial abuse from family members. Small grants for security deposits, legal fees, counseling costs, credit repair. The things you need to get free. We'd already helped 5 women in 3 months. Young women whose parents had stolen their identities. Daughters who'd been manipulated into co-signing predatory loans. Women who'd been told that family always comes first, even when family was destroying them. My mother never spoke to me again. I heard through relatives that she and Kyle had broken up after 3 months. She was waitressing full-time now, living in a studio apartment, going to court-ordered financial counseling as part of a debt settlement program. Part of me still grieved for the mother I'd wanted her to be. But I'd learned something important: you can love someone and still refuse to drown with them. Mrs. Kirkland came to the Grant Fund's first official event. Your father would be proud, she told me, squeezing my hand. I thought about that letter in my pocket, the one I carried everywhere now. Be free, he'd written. And finally, I was. The last time I drove past Maple Street, the new family had painted the shutters blue and planted flowers in the front beds. A bike lay on the lawn. Through the window, I could see a little girl doing homework at the kitchen table. It wasn't my house anymore. It wasn't my mother's house. It was just a house, filled with a family that would make their own memories. I turned the corner and drove toward my own apartment, my own life, my own future. I'd spent 20 years trying to save my mother from herself. It had taken losing everything, and gaining it back. To learn that the only person I could save was me. Some people call what I did revenge. Taking the house, starting the fund, refusing to reconcile. But it wasn't revenge. It was something quieter and stronger. It was choosing myself. It was honoring the protection my father had tried to give me. It was breaking a cycle that had started long before I was born. I didn't take my mother's house to hurt her. I took back my future so I could stop living like I'd already lost it. And that, I'd learned, wasn't cruelty. It was survival. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is simply refuse to be silent anymore. Sometimes peace isn't about forgiveness. It's about finally putting down a weight you were never meant to carry. I pulled into my parking space, grabbed my bag, and walked into my apartment, my name on the lease, my furniture, my rules, my life. The door closed behind me with a soft, final click. For the first time in 25 years, I was home. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What does family mean to you? Please share below and subscribe to this channel for more stories like mine.